You ever sit in a courtroom and feel like everyone already knows the ending but you? That's how it started. The officer didn't yell, didn't posture. He just hauled off and slapped a 16-year-old black kid right there in front of the judge. Nobody breathed. Nobody dared. The boy wiped the blood from his lip, calm as sunrise. And that's when the whole room shifted, because right then his father stepped through the door, and I promise you, you could taste the change in the air. Let me back up a sec. What would you do if someone hit your child in a room built for justice? Would you shout, make a scene, start throwing threats? This father, he didn't have to say a word. He just walked in, and every single person in that court suddenly remembered what respect felt like. Sometimes silence says more than a whole courtroom full of lawyers. You know what I mean? The tension had already been thick before he showed up. You could feel judgment in the way people shifted in their seats, how they stared at the boy cuffed at the wrists, walking between two deputies. He never whimpered, didn't even look up, just took each step with the kind of weight that sticks to your shoes when the world wants you to carry blame. Somebody behind me whispered, "He must have done something bad." And just like that, guilt was already sewn into his skin. Officer Doyle took the stand with a confidence that said he'd done this 100 times, didn't even glance at the kid. He ran through the story, all official. He resisted, got mouthy. I had to restrain him, the way some folks recite their lunch order. The judge nodded, that slow, tired nod that feels like a closed door. That nod was the real sentence. But the boy, let's call him Jalen, just sat there, hands folded, eyes straight ahead, not shrinking, not bracing, just still. He watched Doyle and, soft as a whisper, asked, "Is this your idea of law?" No heat, no attitude, but the question slapped harder than any hand. Doyle froze, then stepped off the stand, and before anyone could blink, backhanded Jalen right across the face in full view of the judge. The sound snapped through the room. A gasp, a stifled curse, but not a single soul moved. Jalen lifted his hand, wiped the blood, and offered this little half-smile, like he'd been through worse and survived. He locked eyes with Doyle and said, "You just made a mistake you'll regret forever." Not loud, but trust me, everyone heard it. That's when I realized this wasn't just a trial. This was a reckoning. They called a recess. The judge left fast. People started whispering. A woman slid into the seat next to Jalen, introducing herself as Nina Ford, his court-appointed defense. She asked for his name. Jalen answered, "Names don't mean anything in here," voice flat, like someone who'd watched this place chew up names and spit out numbers too many times. Still, she pressed, "I'd like to know what to call you." He sighed. Jalen Carter. She checked her Felesno priors, no warning flags, which only deepened her curiosity. This boy didn't flinch, didn't fidget. Control radiated off him, but not the kind you're born with, the kind you're forced to learn. That's when Nina noticed the thin silver chain tucked under his collar, catching the light as he moved. She looked closer, just for a moment, and caught the engraving, "Carter, Field Office, FBI." Her heart skipped. She didn't say a word, but Jalen noticed. He tucked it away, turning from her with a quiet resignation. "Whatever you think that means," he said low, "it doesn't change how they see me in here." During the break, the room buzzed with quiet talk, phones, coffee. Jalen just sat, solitary. Two officers approached casual, like they were picking up dry cleaning. "Routine drug sweep," they announced, and tore through his bag notebooks, pens, even his lunch, all dumped out, every belonging scattered like evidence. Jalen didn't flinch. Nina jumped up, objecting, but they cut her off. "Protocol, ma'am. File your complaint later." That word ladder, it's the favorite shield of people who don't want to listen. Nothing turned up, but one cop wrote "suspicious behavior" on a clipboard and slapped it on the table anyway. The second officer, younger, muttered just loud enough for us to hear, "Look at him. Future inmate, not a student." Jalen zipped his bag, eyes low, not surprised. Doyle reappeared, dropped a folded sheet for the judge. "Your Honor, I'd like to add resisting arrest and obstruction." The judge barely looked up, just clicked his pen and added the charges, as if he were topping off a grocery list. Then he said, "Sometimes you have to treat them like what they'll become." No one gasped this time, just a quiet sickness. When court resumed, Nina stood up, not trembling, not angry, just focused. She held out a flash drive. Your Honor, new evidence. Civilian camera, corner of Darrow and Fifth. It tells a different story. The monitor flickered. There on grainy video, Jalen stood between Officer Doyle and an old man with a cane, frightened, pleading. Doyle shoved the old man. Jalen caught him, acting as a human shield, never raising a fist. The room stopped breathing. Nina said, "This footage contradicts Officer Doyle's sworn statement. My client prevented harm, not caused it." For a heartbeat, hope cracked the air. But Judge Simons leaned back, removed his glasses, and without meeting her eyes, said, "Unverified footage. Dismissed." Just like that. Disbelief hung in the air like someone had buried hope beneath a pile of paperwork. Doyle grinned, leaned in, voice oily. It's always not their fault until they're in cuffs. Jalen looked up for the first time since the slap and said, quietly, "You're not the first to bury the truth, but I might be the last to stay buried." Those words landed, and something shifted. The crowd wasn't just watching anymore, they were feeling. The whole place held its breath. Nina sat beside Jalen, who slid a folded note her way. "Watch. Don't act. Not yet." She glanced at his wrist, plain black digital watch. Standard issue for FBI families, the kind with silent signaling functions. She said nothing, but knew. Jalen reclined, calm as if he already knew the ending. That's when, back in the gallery, a man rose, quiet, deliberate, dark suit, no tie, clean white shirt. He walked down the aisle, every step like a drumbeat. No one knew him, but Jalen didn't look back, didn't have to. The man stepped into the open, voice steady but low, and said, "I am." 2 words. They cut through the air like a cold wind. He pulled out his badge, gold, glinting, final. Marcus Carter, Deputy Director, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Now, let me tell you, the room didn't erupt. It just shifted. You could feel the ground tilt. Doyle tried to steady himself, but his power was gone. Marcus turned to the judge. "You silenced my son. Now you'll hear accountability." The judge, for didn't blink, didn't breathe. Jalen half turned, smiled, "Told you someone would notice." The whole gallery leaned in, and for once, the boy wasn't the one on trial. Marcus spoke clearly. "Your Honor, I'm requesting a special evidentiary hearing on grounds of prosecutorial misconduct, judicial bias, and false testimony." Nina handed over the footage, now with the FBI stamp. Same video, but now it was official. No more denials. Then Marcus presented a folder, 3 prior misconduct cases involving Doyle, all buried by Judge Simons. No one could look away. Marcus's voice thundered. "By order of federal authority, Officer Doyle, you are under arrest for obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and falsifying records." 2 federal agents emerged, cuffed Doyle right there in front of everyone. He tried to speak, but nothing came. Phones flashed videos, snapped. The world outside was suddenly watching. Doyle was let out, face pale, as the room filled with the quiet sound of justice. Judge Simons, hands shaking, said nothing because sometimes silence is surrender, not strength. Within minutes, clips of the arrest were online. Justice for Jalen flooded every feed, every headline. People remembered that courtroom, not for who spoke the loudest, but for the moment justice walked in quietly and stood its ground. In the back, an older woman whispered. He didn't raise his voice, but his silence hit louder than any gavel. She was right. Jalen never shouted, never begged. He simply waited, and when truth finally arrived, he met it head-on. His quiet smile became a symbol. The movement caught fire. Internal reviews launched. Judge Simons's cases were re-examined. Dominoes started to fall. Justice, not from anger, but from the weight of silence finally heard. When the doors opened, the world was waiting. Reporters, cameras, questions, everyone wanting a piece of the story. A reporter shouted, "Why didn't you speak up sooner?" Jalen let the noise fade before answering. "Because when justice speaks for you, you don't need to yell. Not a slogan, just truth." Marcus stood beside him, not as a powerful official, but as a father who missed too many yesterdays. He said, just loud enough, I missed your childhood, but I won't miss your courage. Jalen nodded. No big embrace, just two men walking out into daylight, side by side, toward a new history. Someone in the crowd started to clap. Another joined, then more. It grew not loud, not wild, just respectful. They didn't wave, didn't stop. This wasn't about them, it was about every boy ever told to sit down, every father who thought it was too late, every truth buried under uniforms and silence finally walking free. They tried to silence a boy, but they awakened something bigger. If this story hit you anywhere deep, maybe it's because we all want to believe that quiet dignity can still change the world, and sometimes the loudest justice is the one that stands silent but unbroken in the middle of a storm. Now it's your turn. If you believe in justice, if you've ever wanted to see silence turn into power, drop a comment below. Was the judge wrong? Was the officer's fate fair? What does justice mean to you when the whole world's watching and nobody's talking? Let's talk about it, because maybe, just maybe, that's how the next story gets written.